Well, first of all, Greg, thanks for joining us today. You started race calling in 1979 for the ABC and you've done a remarkable 36 spring carnivals. You call your last race at Caulfield on April 15. How are the emotions?
I'm not too sure how I'm going to feel actually. It seemed like a really good idea back in November to retire, and I was at the end of a spring carnival and pretty tired and worn out, but now it's getting closer and closer to the last call. Guess I'm starting to feel a bit toey because it's a big change in my life. I've been calling for 36 or 37 years, and for it all to be coming to a close, yeah, I'm not too sure actually how I'm going to feel.
What does life after race calling look for Greg Miles?
Well, it'll be quieter, a lot less hectic, probably not as many thrills and highs on a race course, but it's something I am looking forward to. I've been flat out at the game for a long time, and it's just time to slow up a little bit. I'll still be at the races and I'm still going to be involved doing some programs on racing.com, which I'm looking forward to doing, but I'll miss the calling, I know that.
I know this is going to be a tricky one for you, but what's the best racehorse you've ever seen live?
Well, I'd give you a two-pronged answer, I think, because I was fortunate enough to be at Royal Ascot in the year that Black Caviar was there, and I saw Frankel win the Queen Anne. And I think he just blew away a field and ended up with a time form of 147 or something unbelievable. I think it was the highest time form rating they'd ever given. So he was on a one-off, probably the most exciting horse I've seen. But on home soil, I'm sort of reluctant to really separate such a great bunch of horses. Winx is certainly getting there. Black Caviar touched everybody even outside of racing. And Makybe Diva, she did win 3 Melbourne Cups as well as a Cox Plate, so we've been blessed to see some great ones. And I'd probably, if I answered you, I'd give you a different answer tomorrow and a different answer the day after. There's been so many good ones.
What's the most memorable WS Cox Plate you've called and why?
Well, I've got to go back a long way because I was very fortunate that when I first started calling, Kingston Town had won one Cox Plate. So calling for the ABC, I was able to call 2 of Kingston Town's. Called Red Anchor, who was an absolute sensational 3-year-old. The Bone Crusher Waverley Star race was best remembered for Bill Collins' call, no doubt, but I was still a young kid calling the races for the ABC then, and that was one of the greatest races I've ever seen. Fantastic race. And right through to the current list of champions, the likes of Might and Power, his demolition was just extraordinary. Sunline's second was probably one of the most dominant wins. Northerly was a personal favourite of mine. I love both of his wins, and the drama, of course, with the multiple protests, and when he won his second Cox Plate was unbelievable. And the most recent, Winx, is just a phenomenal racehorse. I don't think I've seen him win as easily as she has.
What is it about the Cox Plate, do you think, that makes it such a great race?
Because it's just the right race at the right time, and even at the right racetrack, I think. I'm a bit of a supporter of moving the race track around, like the club's thinking. I actually think that'll be a great idea. But right at the moment, that cauldron, that excitement, the 3-year-olds are always in with a good chance. It's just a perfect race for that time of the year.
The Valley's quite a unique track, isn't it? What's it like calling there compared to other tracks?
It's quite unique on a big race day because where we are perched up on top of the roof of the grandstand, when a big crowd is there and something happens on the track, you can feel and hear the rumble of the crowd as it sort of cascades up to the top of the grandstand, and it's an exciting place to work. Great vantage point, you can see it all unfolding before you in such a tight, unique little circuit. The crowd gets really involved, and you can feel the emotion at Moonee Valley.
Well, Greg, night racing started at the Valley 20 years ago, and you were there that night calling. Can you tell us a bit about the night?
Yeah, I remember it quite well. I was calling for Sky Channel in those days, and it was a huge crowd. Shane Dye won on Vitronite. I think it was either the first race or that was the main race, and we were all so excited. We didn't want the evening to end. And I know I was working with Andrew Bensley, and we went over to a local hotel and had a couple of drinks and just talked about how exciting it was to be racing under lights. It was big night.
Look, it's a very serious caper race calling and there's no room for comedy, but what has been one of the funniest moments you've ever witnessed in the caller's box?
Well, I can reflect on this now, but it wasn't funny at the time, I can tell you. But when I called the 1989 Melbourne Cup, I'd just taken over from Frank O'Brien as a course caller and therefore got promoted up the line and into a better broadcast box closer to the line. And as it happens, there's a balcony right to my right-hand side, which had remained completely empty all year, and no one was on it on Derby Day. No one had been on it all day Melbourne Cup Day either. But as I lined in for the start of the Melbourne Cup and I was looking to the start, I just had this feeling that there was somebody standing on the balcony, and it was right. There were two women with huge hats had come out with their glasses of champagne to watch the race. And I realised as they were coming down the straight that if they remained there, I wouldn't be able to see the turnout of the straight at all. So as they went down past the post, I just grabbed my race book and I swatted them like that, and they spilled half their champagne and ducked for cover and got out of the way. Fortunately, otherwise I wouldn't have seen them. My heart leapt out of my chest. It was the first time I was calling a Melbourne Cup for the PA and had that to deal with. So I'd never seen them before and I've never seen them since.
Take us back to the 1986 William Reid Campaign Kings going around a short price favourite, and I believe you had a vested interest in the race.
Yeah, the backstory to that is that I'd just recently got married and we were saving up for a house, and it seemed like pretty much like it is today. The more you save, the house prices get further away from you. So I said to my wife Alison, I said, we've got a little bit of money saved up. I've got an idea. I said, why don't we have a bet and leap right ahead and we'll be able to afford to buy a place. And I'd done a few stories and seen a bit of Campaign King training up at Berrigan, and I thought he was just a good thing in the William Reid. So I convinced my wife, we'd saved up $4,000. I said, let's just pull it all out and have a bet. And she said, you reckon it'll win? I said, I think it'll win. So she agreed, which was the biggest surprise to me. So anyway, I took the money out, and it was all cash in those days. It had to be cash. So I gave it to a friend of mine, and I was hoping in the lead up in the weeks we might have got 3-1 or something like that. Anyway, he was 6-4, so we averaged 13-8. So he's gone down and I've gone up to the caller's box to call the race for the ABC. I don't know which one of us was more nervous, Harold, who was putting the bet on for me, or me to call the race. So anyway, he won, but he got there by that much. He beat Torbeck in a really close photo finish. It took for ages for the photo to come and the result to be known, so that long 90-second period waiting for the number. I'd called the race, I thought, reasonably well, but when the number went in the frame, I think I blew the crystals out of every radio set that was listening to me when the number went in the frame. Anyway, I got home and 4 became 10, walked back home with the wad of cash, and Elle said, how'd we go? Pretty good.
Greg, I'm going to take you back here and test your memory. Thursday, January 24, 2002. It was the Qantas Frequent Flyer Handicap, over 3,000 metres. Do you remember the race and what happened?
Yeah, I do. Again, I was calling that for Sky. I think I might have been doing the on-courses as well. And that was a 3,000 metre race that Reece McLeod had mistaken the laps. And I thought, coming around the home turn, I think I said something like, gee, I hope this guy knows there's another lap to go.
Mystic Outlaw going great guns coming around the turn the first time. Job, he hasn't mistaken the laps here. He's pulled the whip and he's about 6 or 7 lengths in front on Mystic Outlaw as he swings around the home turn with a big lead.
And when he started riding it out in the straight, my heart sunk for him really, because then I knew by the time they got to the mile, the other boys were going to pick him up and say, you've made a terrible blue here, mate.
He has pulled this leader up. He really does think it's a 1,200 metre race, and he's pulled the leader right up to a walk. He'll get a shock when they want to keep going with him.
And these are the things that occasionally happen in racing, and that's something that Reece has had to live with. It was, not fun for him.
Reece McLeod just trying to find a hole somewhere to hide, I think.
Actually, you can be searching for something else completely different on YouTube and it comes up.
This is brutal power, wrapped in an elegant machine.
That was your famous call for Black Caviar when it won the William Reid. Can you take us back to that night and that call?
Don't know where that one came from. Black Caviar was a challenge because she you just knew she was going to win. Every time she went out, it wasn't a matter of can she win, how will she do it, it was just she was going to win. So you had to think of something. I didn't want to say there's win number 18, there's win number 19. You had to think of something that sort of matched the moment a bit, I suppose. And we knew that was going to be the last time we'd see her, that William Reid, she was going up to Sydney for the farewell. And I'd started to run out of things to say, I suppose. And I just thought it is brutal, and she's such a beautiful machine. So yeah, that sort of flowed out.
The sport of kings can bring up a lot of emotion. Is there a time where you've been in the caller's box and the emotions somewhat got the better of you?
Well, I think the most emotion-charged moment I've witnessed was when Damien Oliver, after he won the Melbourne Cup on Media Puzzle. Everybody knows the story that he lost his brother just a week before the race. Would he ride or would he not ride? He hadn't ridden well, and he went out on one of the favourites in the Melbourne Cup, and when he came back and after saluting the heavens and that return to scale, I recall that we welcomed the winners back to scale, and I looked down and the hill stand, everyone was standing there crying. You think about it now, you get emotional. And I could hardly speak to bring him back to scale. It still touches me now to think of it.
Well, Greg, you've been an absolute icon of the racing industry, and we've enjoyed hearing you over the last 36 Spring Carnivals. On behalf of the Moonee Valley Racing Club and the entire Victorian racing industry, congratulations, thank you, and all the best in retirement.
I've been very, very fortunate for a long, long time that this industry has indulged me. They've allowed me to enjoy my passion, and they paid me for it. I couldn't give a big enough thank you.